I'm Vay and you're watching Vay's channel. And on today's episode, the plant of the week is my beautiful bamboo. It is a matching plant that I have. Yes, I have matching plants. I know, goals. Moving on. We are going to have consistent videos. Finally, my problem has been solved and now I can post videos every week without delay. Hallelujah. But today's video is going to be a follow-up kind of, right? For one of my earlier videos, I mentioned a clip from Midnight Gospel, which is a great show to watch. A great show to listen to. To watch it, it's kind of weird, but I like it. It's on Netflix if you do want to watch that, but it is one of the clips that I posted earlier in the beginning of my channel when I was talking about mindful listening. I'm not going to put it in right now, but basically it was saying that we are such busy people that we forget to clear our mind when listening to people, which is very important, which ties together with the books that I'm reading, which is so, I don't even know how to explain it. It expands so much more on things than I was expecting. The lost art of listening. I was expecting it to only be about listening, but it's also about how the communicator communicates. Hold on, 1 second. And no, I'm not finished with that book, but I am closer than I was before. I love reading. Sitting still is not a strong suit of mine. Especially when, so I read books that trigger me on purpose to cause healing, so they are going to take me way longer than a book I enjoy, if that makes sense. If it's a fiction book, I may be able to read that quick, but if it's a book that's calling me out on every other page, I'm gonna need a minute. And that's just tea. It just is what it is, you know what I mean? Because not only does it tell you what you need to hear, oh, this wasn't, this is this, but it's also telling you the effects of it. So it goes into depth, if you weren't listened to as a kid, and then you need maybe a week to process what this book just told you about your own life. So it's a bit of a journey, okay? I do recommend it though. If you are into healing and need help healing, these books are beautiful for it, but I can guarantee you it will trigger the life out of you, okay? Okay. But I want to talk about defensive listening just a little bit, because I have mentioned it on my Instagram story, but I haven't mentioned it on my YouTube, I don't think, and if I have, it wasn't a full video. Defensive listening, it's similar in nature, as in the importance of it, of mindful listening, but it's the opposite of it. So when you're listening mindfully, you are clearing your opinions of the things that this person is saying until they're finished saying it. You're just listening. You're not thinking of, oh, how this could relate to me, oh, how this could do this, what I need to do next Tuesday. You're listening and you're honed in on the person. Now, defensive listening is listening for things to react to, in a sense. Okay, so there's defensive listening and there's reactive listening, and that's two different things. Defensive listening is listening to defend yourself. So listening to, or the other party, listening to combat what the other person is saying, which is not a fun conversation to be in, especially as a communicator, because you could be trying to get a point across and the other person just wants to play devil's advocate, which Unless you're on a debate team. I don't know why you do that, but it is what it is. Defensive listening is always choosing the opposite side of what the person is saying, even if you don't agree, which I was going to try to find an explanation for it, but I am unsure because I don't have experience in that realm, so I don't want to speak on something I don't have experience in, and I haven't researched it outside of my experiences being defensively listened to and this book, so I'm not going to dive into that unless I know more information, but it is not being mindful and not listening, so you are most likely missing the points of the communicator, which causes a disconnect. And this book explains that when there's a disconnect in the relationship, it's like creating an invisible wall. Now, if you are a constant defensive listener, that means that every time you talk to this person, you create more walls between each other. And I will go into the importance of being listened to at some point. Mind you, there's more topics in this book that I could talk about, but right now this just seems more relevant because we see this tendency in different generations. If you are a younger generation talking to an older generation, you can understand the point of defensive listening. Oh, I do know why people do. I just got, wow, clarity. Sometimes talking out loud helps. If you are in a constant state of having to defend yourself, you may be a defensive listener. And I understand that. And I guess I wasn't thinking about that earlier, but learning when you're supposed to be a defensive listener, because it's not always bad. Sometimes you're right to defend yourself, but when you're in a vulnerable, safe environment, you don't have to defend yourself, and that is important. So vulnerability matched with vulnerability is the correct way to do it, but but the idea that was given to me that from this book that is very important is emotional wounds. I've heard this before, but I didn't remember it. Sometimes you have something in the back of your mind that you know, but you need to be brought to light again by something else, which is what happens not only with books, but people and places and things. But your emotional wounds are as bad as physical wounds in your brain. It's the same thing that gets activated, which is protection for ourselves, which is, in a sense, emotional self-defense, right? Defensive listening. We're getting somewhere. But as people, we learn, or we're supposed to learn, not to do the things that hurt us, right? Just out of nature, human nature. So if the last time you were vulnerable and you got hurt, and the last time you were vulnerable and you got hurt, there's a pattern. So you adapt to that pattern. The adapting could be the problem. When you are eventually in an actual safe position and not in the position you were before, which is carrying emotions over to the next, that's a whole different topic. To the next situation when it's not the same person or not the same circumstances, which can be seen in the reactions of people who have previously been in any forms of abusive relationships before. Being in a healthy one now, it changes the whole existence of you in that space. But again, not this video. You have to be mindful of when you're being defensive and why you're being defensive. If you are in an argument, you're going to be defensive. But defensive listening, you can't hear the other person. You basically turn off your ears and you're just spit firing from your mouth. And that normally isn't a proper way to do things. Don't get me wrong, there are some people who can just autopilot talk, but most of the time you should probably think about what you say before you say it, because our brains are wild. Let's be real. So defensive listening, yes, it can be needed, but no, not when being met with vulnerability. Don't get me wrong, there are some circumstances that may change that idea, but apply it as it may, okay? I can't constantly be saying that these things are full facts when there's always going to be a situation that proves it just a little bit wrong. These videos are to give you the tools, I've said this before, and you are to do with them with whatever you feel fit. But being mindful of defensive listening and when to apply it and when not to apply it, or when you are applying it and you shouldn't be, which is the same thing, is important. Because if you're creating these walls in between someone you care about and you, and you're unaware of it, you may be the problem, which is a lot of spirituality, the real spirituality, not the one that TikTok has created, and self-love. Really, it all goes back to self, everything, to be honest with you. So yeah, defensive listening. I'm hoping these videos will be longer. I know that people enjoy my rambling for long periods of time, but these have just been quick little wrap-ups. I think that when I get further in the book, these videos can be longer, or like part 2 or elaborated on, but right now I'm kind of still in the processing stage. Sometimes it takes years to really process what things meant. That you'll hear people that are older tell you that all the time. When you get older, you'll understand what I mean. Sometimes that's not true and they're saying the bizarre things, but sometimes that is the case. Anyways, I will see you next week. Learn when to keep your defenses up and when to take them down.